So I think it's pretty fair to say that recently, gaming preservation has been a much bigger conversation than it used to be. We've been seeing more and more older games coming back with classic collections, retro ports, remasters. Entire franchises are getting preserved for modern platforms, and I think that made me realize something about Tomb Raider. I am philipcroft, and I'm here to tell you about the forgotten Tomb Raider history.
Call up the footage, please.
When people think Tomb Raider, they mostly remember three major eras: the classic games, the LAU trilogy, and the Survivor trilogy. And of course some spin-off games like the mobile games and the Lara Croft series that include Temple of Osiris and the Guardian of the Light. That's usually where the conversation stops. But what if I told you there's an entire part of Tomb Raider history that maybe most fans don't even know exists? Because buried deep in this franchise, there's even more games that deserve preservation as well. Lara Croft actually had multiple portable adventures long before modern handheld gaming even existed the way we know it today. And I'm talking about Tomb Raider, Tomb Raider Curse of the Sword, and Tomb Raider The Prophecy. And what makes this even more interesting, these weren't random spin-offs. The first two handheld games were developed by the original creators of Tomb Raider, Core Design, the same studio responsible for the original Lara Croft games, which means these aren't weird side projects, they are legitimate pieces of Tomb Raider history, and there's not been many talks about them. Now here's where things get really impressive. You need to remember what kind of hardware we're actually talking about here, the Game Boy. This thing had serious limitations, and somehow they managed to recreate Tomb Raider on it in the year 2000. There was platforming, puzzle solving, swimming mechanics, combat, climbing systems, exploration, traps, on a Game Boy. Core Design took one of gaming's biggest 3D adventure franchises and squeezed it onto hardware that had absolutely no business handling something that ambitious. And then we got Tomb Raider Curse of the Swords, which improved on everything. Better level design, better pacing, more enemy variety, more ambitious storytelling, darker themes, even supernatural elements. And honestly, this is one of those games where you can tell the developers weren't treating it like some quick cash grab. They were trying to improve and push the franchise further to a lot of platforms, not just the main ones at the time, because this was a game released in 2001. People were already more interested in PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2. Then came Tomb Raider The Prophecy, and this one was fascinating because instead of staying with side-scrolling gameplay, the game completely shifted direction. It had isometric perspective, larger environments, different movement systems, more visual detail. It really felt like handheld Tomb Raider was trying to evolve, and I think that deserves way more appreciation than it gets. It feels like an entire trilogy got locked away. But here's something even more interesting. Even the LAU era found its way to portable systems. For example, Tomb Raider Legend had its own handheld version. Yes, Legend. One of the most beloved modern Tomb Raider games, actually released on the Game Boy Advance and not with a direct port. An entirely reworked portable adaptation, which is honestly something maybe a lot of fans have never seen, and this game is actually really fun. And then we get to something even stranger, Tomb Raider Underworld. Again, a completely different portable adaptation for Nintendo DS, designed around handheld limitations, new gameplay adjustments, a whole separate version of the game. And this is where I think Tomb Raider history gets fascinating, because people often think of each main game as having one version, but Lara had this entire portable history running alongside the console games. This just goes to show that for years, this franchise had a lot of reach. Tomb Raider was considered valuable enough to bring everywhere, and these forgotten versions are proof of that history. And I think this is where the bigger preservation conversation starts to get really fascinating, because lately, we've been seeing publishers realize there's actual value in preserving old games. There are companies right now whose entire business model is built around bringing older titles back. Studios that specialized in restoring forgotten gaming history, taking old console games and making them playable again on modern hardware. And that matters, because suddenly the games that people assumed were gone forever are coming back. For example, we've been seeing renewed interest in classic licensed games, games connected to franchises like Toy Story, Rayman, Barbie. Publishers are actively looking at older titles and saying, maybe there's value here, maybe preservation matters, maybe nostalgia matters, maybe people still care. And if publishers are willing to revisit games like that, why not Tomb Raider? There's something worth preserving here as well, and let's not forget, Lara Croft is gaming's most iconic female character ever, and with so many collaborations and new games coming out, this would look great on the franchise as well. Imagine this for a second, a Tomb Raider portable collection, including Tomb Raider, Tomb Raider Curse of the Swords, Tomb Raider The Prophecy, Tomb Raider Legends, and Tomb Raider Underworlds. Upscaled visuals, save states, concept art, developer commentary, a proper preservation package, and suddenly, a completely forgotten side of Tomb Raider history becomes accessible again, and us fans would eat it up. I think this franchise deserves preservation beyond just the obvious titles. Yes, I want LAU remasters, absolutely, but I also think these forgotten handheld games matter too, because they tell part of Lara Croft's story. They represent an era where Tomb Raider was expanding everywhere, and I think that deserves recognition. If publishers are willing to preserve forgotten games for other franchises, if retro collections are becoming more popular, then maybe one day, Lara's more pixelated adventures could also finally come back. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let's unite and ask for our beloved games to be accessible everywhere so that we can celebrate Lara Croft's history in all its glory in all formats and consoles. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for all things Tomb Raider and more, and stay tuned. Bye bye!